Okay, so now we're going to look at tangent. And so we'll start with tangent of 0 pi. And so just like before, tangent has an angle measure inside. And now we're looking at the y value over the x value because this is tangent. And so my triangles, everything still works the same way, but I'm looking at the y value and the x value together, which means that we're going to have to do some division. And so here is 0 pi. It's also the same as 2 pi or 0 degrees and 360. And so I have the x value and I have the y value. And so that becomes 0 over 1. And so 0 divided by 1, when you simplify, ends up being 0. And so tangent of 0 pi is equal to 0. Okay, let's look at the other easy one, and then we'll come to the fractions. So here we have tangent of, we'll go with 270. And so for 270, it's still y over x. And so here I'm looking at x and y. And so this is -1 divided by 0. Well, if you remember back to when we talked about rational functions, you'll remember that 0 in the denominator is going to cause my whole situation to be undefined. And so here, anytime 0 is in the denominator, tangent is going to be undefined. And so for your answer for these, you can just type undefined. Anytime 0 is in the numerator, 0 divided by 1 is always 0. So 0 in the numerator is fine, 0 in the denominator is not fine, and it's undefined. All right, so that's our first two situations. And then we can look at tangent of 30 degrees. And so tangent of 30 degrees is still y over x. And so at 30 degrees, I'm looking at the x value and the y value. And so I have 1/2 as my y value divided by the square root of 3 over 2. And you're probably looking at me like, Miss H, we don't like fractions. And right now you have fractions inside of another fraction. What are you doing to us? And so what I want you to think about, what I want you to look at is look at how we can simplify this ugly fraction. We don't like fractions. Let's try to simplify this ugly fraction. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that. I think the easiest one is to look at the denominators that we have in these two. They're both 2. And so what we can do is really, they're going to divide out, but I want to show you why they're going to divide out. And so if I take the top and I multiply the top fraction by 2, and I also multiply the bottom fraction by 2, when I multiply straight across, if I think about these as fractions, the 2's, the 1 times 2 gives me 2, and then 2 times 1 gives me 2. But really what's happening is these 2's are dividing each other out. And so what's left in the numerator is just 1. And these 2's here are also going to divide out. And so what's left here is the square root of 3. And so here we're left with 1 over the square root of 3. And so really the 2's divided out, and we're left with 1 over the square root of 3. And so we have to fix that value and rationalize it. Rationalize it. And so what that means is I need to take this denominator, because I can't leave the square root in the denominator. I need to take that denominator and I need to multiply it by the top and the bottom, because when I multiply straight across, I end up with the square root of 3 divided by the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, which really equals the square root of 9. But the square root of 9, when you simplify, ends up being 3. So now my square root isn't in the denominator anymore. The square root is in the numerator. And so this would be my final answer for that one. Let's look at 45 degrees next. So then tangent of 45 degrees is equal to y over x. And so I have the square root of 2 over the square root of 2, square root of 2 over 2, divided by the square root of 2 over 2. And so hopefully what you notice here is this number is the same as this number. And so anytime I have the same number divided by the same number, it equals 1. And so that one's nice and happy and easy. And then we can look at tangent of 60. Still y over x, because we're still talking about tangent. But now I'm looking at the square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. And so this is really similar to what we just saw here. And so we know that those 2's are going to divide out. But just to show you one more time, I can multiply the top by 2, and I can multiply the bottom by 2, and that's going to make those 2's divide out, because 1/2 times 2 is really just 1. And the square root of 3 is left on top. And so this one is nice, this situation. So when I have the square root of 3 over 2 in the numerator, it simplifies nicely, and so my final answer for this is really just the square root of 3. This one, when the square root of 3 over 2 is in the denominator, leaves my square root in the denominator, and I have to fix it. So really, there's only 5 options here. Now, there could be positive, negative options, but we did 0 degrees, we did 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees, or 270 degrees. They're similar in their answers. And so we've looked at all of these possible options. So anytime you're doing tangent on the unit circle, has to be one of these 5 options. So if you have 1/2 over square root 3 over 2, it's always going to simplify to the square root of 3 over 3. Anytime you have square root 2 over 2 divided by square root 2 over 2, same number over same number, always going to be 1. So whatever you're doing, all of these values have to be one of these that's given. So hopefully that helps you as you're learning tangent today, and I will be back on Tuesday, and I will see you guys on Tuesday and check in with you and make sure that we understood all of this. Thanks, y'all.